Can a dictator fall in 18 days? That's what it seemed like when millions of Egyptian protesters caused President Hosni Mubarak to resign in 2011. Many were inspired by the fall of Tunisia's leader, Zine El Abidine Ben Ali, just days earlier on January 14th, after less than a month of protest. When Egyptians took to the streets on January 25th, few imagined that they would bring down Mubarak, whose 30-year rule was so entrenched that he was nicknamed the Pharaoh. They picked that date, meant to commemorate Egypt's police force, to instead protest police brutality, detention, and torture, calling to impeach Egypt's Interior Minister, Habib al-Adli, and to hold officers accountable. This was partly organized through the Facebook group We Are All Khaled Said, named after an Egyptian man who was beaten to death by Egypt's security forces in the street. Said had become a symbol for Egyptians nationwide, hundreds of thousands of which joined the Facebook group and even changed their profile pictures to Said's face. The page's call for Egyptians to protest against police brutality and poor living standards spread rapidly, and huge crowds turned out across the country. The protests grew day by day, calling for freedom, bread, and justice, with Cairo's Tahrir Square at its center. The government instantly responded with tear gas, water cannons, rubber bullets, and even live ammunition. But even thousands of deployed police and military curfews could not stop the protests. On January 28th, the government shut off access to internet and mobile phone networks across the country. But this only made the public angrier. After Friday prayers, crowds across the country gathered outside mosques to protest, which became known as the Day of Rage. Though the police became more violent, ultimately killing a total of 840 people over this time, protesters refused to stop. Some chanted that they would not leave Tahrir Square until Mubarak left office. During this time, the square became a place of community in which Egyptians could discuss the country's future. Young men refusing to leave slept on the metal tracks of army tanks, while others shared blankets and food while they stayed put, day and night. Songs such as Irhal, meaning leave, by singer Rami Issam, became national protest anthems against Mubarak's government. Then, less than 3 weeks later, on February 11th, the impossible happened. Mubarak's resignation was announced, sparking huge celebrations. But the relief was short-lived. Elections were held in 2012, but the democratically elected government of Mohamed Morsi was overthrown in a coup by Egypt's military the next year. Protesters once again took to the streets to protest, but the new government of General Abdel Fattah el-Sisi reacted with immense violence, forcibly clearing Egypt's Rabaa Square by killing roughly 900 protesters in what Human Rights Watch called crimes against humanity in August 2013. Since then, Sisi has crushed Egypt's civil society, holding an estimated 60,000 political prisoners in detention centers across the country, many of whom are subject to torture, starvation, and medical neglect. In the rest of the country, corruption and mismanagement led to an economic crisis as Egyptians suffered chaotic inflation and fuel and bread shortages, no longer able to afford basic necessities. Although freedom of speech is now all but gone, this has not stopped recurring protests. Despite mass arrests, Egyptians protested again in 2019 and 20 amid another wave of uprisings across the region. Events such as Israel's war on Gaza and the overthrow of Assad's government in Syria have also inspired rare protests in Egypt, along with the viral hashtags #YourTurnNext, in the wake of Assad's fall. For many, the collapse of one ruler inspires hope that they could one day achieve the end of another. For scores of Egyptians in prison, exile, or poverty, this hope is all they have.
يسقط حسن مبارك